Do you ever feel a little bit overwhelmed when you enter a cheese shop and you're just confronted with all of those choices available and you don't even know where to start? Or do you feel a little bit confused about how you go about creating a nicely balanced cheese board where you end up with not too many of the same cheeses? Or perhaps you don't know how to pair your cheese to your wine. Or do you ever get confused about all the cheese jargon that's floating about? Well, please allow me to share with you my 5 top tips that will give you the cheese confidence that you need when shopping for cheese. And then I'll share with you my cheese board that I created today that you can use as a blueprint for creating lovely, balanced, and delicious cheese boards in the future. My name is Svetlana, and I'm the founder of an award-winning cheese specialist based in Scotland. We specialize in farmhouse and artisan cheeses from the British Isles and from Europe. I have a 20-year-long career in fine cheese. I've made, retailed, mature cheeses, and even judged cheeses around the world. I've written 2 books on cheese, and I just love sharing my passion with you guys and helping you enjoy them to the utmost. So without further ado, please let me share with you my 5 top tips to give you the cheese confidence that you need. Tip number 1. Before you start selecting your cheeses, decide on the number of the cheeses that you're going to go for. It is important because then you'll know how many varieties you can showcase, how many different milks and so on. So I personally think that a cheese board made of 3 cheeses is very good, 4 cheeses is very, very good, and 5 cheeses is excellent because then we can showcase the most varieties of cheese available. Step number 2, decide on your wine. So before you even start thinking about picking the cheeses, pick your wine first because wines can vary in body and therefore intensity of flavor. So if you're going for a light-bodied white wine, it will be different than if you go for a slightly heavier-bodied white wine. So decide on the wine. And with that knowledge, you can start thinking about your 5, for instance, cheeses. So tip number 3, think about the textures. So we don't have any knowledge or we don't need any specific cheese knowledge up till this stage. All we need to think of is numbers, wine, and now we're starting to think about the different textures. So for instance, if you're going for a cheese board that will have 5 cheeses, I do recommend potentially including 2 soft cheeses, 2 firm cheeses, and 1 blue. They'll give you the most variety and therefore will create a nicely balanced cheese board. Now, the next step is decide on the milks. So if you're open to all milk varieties, I do recommend including them all. So what milk varieties are there? We have goat's milk, we have cow's milk, we have ewe's milk, and even buffalo milk. So if you can at least include 3, you will be doing really, really great, and you will be bringing nuances of flavor that are particular to each variety of milk. And my final 5th tip is to talk to your cheesemonger. Don't forget that cheesemongers, they are not just there to cut your cheese. They also have that all-important knowledge about cheeses. They know how ripe or mature they are. They know how they're tasting at the moment, if there are any seasonal variations, what cheeses work better with which wines. So if you chat to them, you may be able to get that all-important knowledge, and they will help you create a lovely and balanced cheese board. So those are my 5 tips. They're very easy. Please do bear them in mind. So first we're deciding on the number of the cheeses, then we pick in the wine, then we balance in the textures and milks, and finally we will remember that we can chat to our cheesemonger if we get stuck. So now let's go through the cheese board that I've prepared today, and I will demonstrate how all of these tips that I've just mentioned helped me to create this cheese board. And hopefully I'll inspire you to use this as a blueprint for your future cheese boards. So first of all, I decided that I wanted to go for 5 cheeses because that gives me the biggest scope to showcase as many varieties and milks as possible. Then I made the decision on my wine, and I decided to go for this lightly oaked Burgundy Chardonnay. So it's not a very light-bodied white wine, it has a little bit more to it, and therefore I think I'll work with most cheeses very, very nicely on my cheese board. So then I decided to balance my textures, and I knew that I wanted to include 2 soft cheeses, 2 firm cheeses, and a blue. Then when I started deciding about the cheeses, and I wanted to bear in mind I wanted to include as many milk varieties as possible, I went for a goat's milk cheese, a cow's milk cheese, another cow's milk cheese, sheep's, and sheep's. So what are these cheeses? First, I started with Chèvre d'Argental, which is a nice, creamy French goat's milk cheese. It's enriched with a little bit of cream, and it's got this lovely edible rind, which gives it a mushroomy note. Then I've included a Maida Vale, which is a washed rind cheese. And washed rind, it means that it's washed with a brine solution when it's being matured, and it gives it a little bit of an aromatic nature, shall we say. And this cheese is lovely and buttery and a little bit nutty. So while I have 2 soft cheeses, they're quite different to each other. They bring something different. Not only they're different milks, but they also have different skins or rinds on the outside. Then I started deciding on my 2 firm cheeses. And what I wanted to do here is, of course, have different milks if I can. So I have an Alpine cow's milk. This cheese is called Appenzeller Edel Würzig. And then I have Coralin, which is a sheep's milk cheddar from Scotland. So Appenzeller is this gorgeous, nutty, smooth, amazing Alpine cheese. It has a little bit of crunch, but the texture otherwise is very smooth on the palate. Then I contrasted that with a crumblier texture of a cheddar. But because it is sheep's milk, this Coralin has a nutty, rich, and kind of lanolin flavor, so to speak. So we've got 2 firm cheeses, but they're quite different to each other. And of course, finally, I wanted to finish on a big note, and my choice today is this fabulous Roquefort Vieux Berger. So this is absolutely the best Roquefort on the market, if you ask me. It is absolutely creme de la creme, and I do recommend that you try it if you can. So there you have it. I have 5 different cheeses. I have lots of different combinations of flavors and aromas going on here, and I will be enjoying this cheese board with a nice, lightly oaked Chardonnay. Well, there you have it. I do hope that this video inspired you and gave you that cheese confidence that you need going forward. And you'll be able to create nicely balanced and delicious cheese boards from now on.